Oh, sorry, after 50 even. See, I don't even know how many we've done to talk about that properly. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 51st, and not the 52nd, Ignite Liverpool. It's crazy, isn't it? Like, we're pushing on to our century. That's the next big milestone, is it, right now? I shouldn't get, no, I'm going to be too off that. Anyway, if you haven't been before, well, I mean, the same thing's going to happen if you have been before, but if you've not been before, you might not know what's going to happen. And I'm not going to be on all night, as you'll be quite pleased to hear. So we're going to have a bunch of talks. Sadly, a few fewer than we were anticipating, but we've picked the 6 best ones to have on tonight. So we'll have 3 talks. Then there'll be a bit of an interval, so you can chat amongst yourselves about what you thought about the first 3 talks, which one was best, or whatever. Get another drink, all that kind of stuff. And then we'll have a second half. At the start of the second half, there will be 1-minute pitches. So if you've got a project or an event or something you think that the sort of awesome audience such as yourselves would like to hear about, then come and find me or head to the back corner and find one of the other organisers and let us know. And then at the start of the second half, we'll get people up for some quick 1-minute, I'm doing this thing, it's going to be amazing, it's on this date, this is how you can find out more, come along, kind of things, just so that you all get to hear about some more awesome stuff. And then we'll be back in with the really long talks, we've got another 3 talks, and then it'll be the end. And I've just realised that I have not told you how, the long talks. So each talk has 20 slides. Each slide is on screen for 15 seconds, and the speaker has no control over that. So each talk will last for 5 whole minutes, and then we'll have another interesting talk. So if there's something that you're passionate, we're always, and particularly given that we've had a couple of dropouts and stuff, more talks are always welcome. I mean, if anybody's got 20 slides in their back pocket, we can probably slot you in the second half. But if not, work out what you're passionate about, and let Neil, who's in the red t-shirt, know that you'd like to speak at a future one. So always on the lookout for new, awesome people to get up on stage. It's a super friendly crowd, so don't worry if you've not spoken before. It's a nice intro. You don't have to worry about the slides. They all just kind of take care of themselves, and you just stand up here for 5 minutes, and then it's over. So yeah, you should definitely come and give a talk if you haven't before. And if you have before, you should come and give another talk. Right, anyway, that's probably enough of me rambling on, and we can get our first speaker on tonight. And last time at Ignite, she was compere. And I know you were all hoping that she was going to be on stage tonight being compere again, but sadly you got me. But we got Kath up for a whole 5 minutes talking about class.
Yeah, we thought we'd start off the evening with a nice light-hearted subject of class discrimination. Yeah, why is class everyone's least favourite represented and diversity category? I've noticed with a lot of diversity issues, for example, sexism, racism, there's a slow, gradual increase of acceptance and rights. With class, it tends to go, when things are trendy, it goes up and down. When things are trendy, and then it falls off again. So there's never any real sustained attempt at, equality from working classes. I was at a writing retreat a few weeks ago in North Wales, and I had to save up for it because it was quite dear. Everyone else on the writing retreat was absolutely minted. And very, very, after a couple of hours, I've just started to feel quite uncomfortable. And they started talking about, oh yes, when I was in Singapore. And it was the first time in a very long time that I felt not included. And even though I'm doing all right for myself, I felt inferior in some way. We all know that Oasis have reformed. Who hasn't heard of Oasis have reformed? And since they've come back, there's been a lot of references to Oasis being the working class voice, as if there's some sort of authentic working class voice, when in fact Liam Gallagher spent a lot of the 1990s insisting that he'd never read a book. Here we can see the way that the media covers social mobility. It goes up, down, and it's currently in a downward slope. The way the different classes are valued is shown here. That's lovely Sophie Ellis Baxter with her 5 children. She's very middle class, very posh. If a woman up my road had 5 kids, there'd be absolute murder, I think. There's a social mobility penalty. If you come from a working class background and you move into the professionals, then you're still going to be earning less than someone who comes from, a professional background, which is something that is absolutely fascinating. This statement is always rolled out every GCSE results, and it's not true. If you're middle class, you're absolutely fine. It doesn't matter what your results are. If you're working class, then you're going to struggle more. This is from the general election in 2019. It was a poster that was posted near my house in Birkenhead. And I was like, yeah, who does hate the working class more? I don't think the Tories put that up, and that's something that's profoundly depressing. This lad won the lottery 20 years ago, and he spent it all on booze and women and holidays, and he was very much held up as like the enemy. The working classes are very feckless, they can't manage money. This is the opposite end of the spectrum, where working class men totally disrespected for getting themselves fit, earning a profession. A lot of times, professional footballers are, held up as, in one icons, the other end is like they're not respected at all. Angie Rayner, who's come from a very underprivileged background and has done so well for herself, was like ripped to pieces in the press for having a night out in Ibiza with a glass of water in her hand. The rioting in Spello Library was very much discussed in the media. It was the result of, deprived area, but also there was an undercurrent of racism there. But we must remember that racism is not just a working class pursuit. It goes through all the different classes. It's just the different classes find different ways of expressing it. And there's Meghan Markle, who's a victim of racism, in my view. Okay, so Keir Starmer insisted his father was a toolmaker all the way through the election campaign. I know a lot of people mocked about it, but what my view is that if you've got a disadvantage in your background, why shouldn't you use it as an advantage later on? Rich people, they have the old school tie, they have connections, and they use that. And that's something that wasn't really thought about when Keir was going about being a toolmaker. This is a common meme. Birkenhead is always being slagged off and mocked for being a working class town. I think the class system stays the way it is, fear of change, and that goes through all the classes. I think working class people sometimes can feel reluctant to move from their safety, and obviously rich people want to keep hold of their money, don't they? And I think ultimately when it comes to social mobility, it's a case of if you can see it, you can be it, and also being seen is important as well. Thank you.
She came from Greece. She had a thirst for knowledge. She studied sculpture at St. Martin's College. That's where I caught her eye. She told me that her dad was loaded. I said, in that case, I'll have a rum and Coca-Cola. She said, fine. And in 30 seconds' time, she said, I want to live like common people. I want to do whatever common people do. I want to sleep with common people.
Thanks for that, Kath. I think Dan picked the really slow version of that song, so I had to kind of walk on stage really slowly, so we got some more of it. But that was cool. But yeah, you'll see throughout the night that just like listen out for the music at the end of each talk, because Dan's always just kind of picking things out and trying to tie it in with whatever he thinks people are going to talk about, in the same way that I try to come up with stupid links to link things together, but I haven't for this one. So I'm mostly just going to welcome Tim Brunson to the stage, who's going to tell us about floral civilians.
For All Civilians, which is an urban gardening project in New Brighton. Anybody from New Brighton in the room? Yes, cool. We look after the 24 brick planters in and around the streets of New Brighton. We're inspired by the community planting that went on in Cairn Street in Toxteth. I made a little film there about 2011, where a lot of the community got together to counteract the tinning up of the houses by planting streets and stuff, and they made a little market. This is Rimrose Valley, where I've also done some work, and that's a large wildflower meadow to help their campaign to fight the Port of Liverpool building a 4-lane highway through the park. And in New Brighton, it's had its problems. There is some dereliction. This is Witherspoons, boo. They've left that to rot. And there's been a few other derelict buildings and stuff. So we started the planting in the streets really to help sort of counteract that. Here we are. This is one of the brick planters. They're owned by the council, so we had to get permission to work on them. They were all overgrown, mainly. So we started by sort of cutting them back. We found out that they're quite good for if you're older. You don't have to bend down so much, which is quite handy. So that's a lot of the clearing that's gone. That's quite a nice sort of space, really. We've tried to keep what's there, try and get stuff that's going to come back every year, so we don't have to keep replanting things. We've had a drink on the way, but that's some of the stuff we've found. A lot of them were being used as litter bins. They've got their own issues, but we have seen some sort of wildlife come back, and the aim is to try and, as I say, look at sustainable planting, bee-friendly stuff. Some of the benefits is that we've met neighbours and things. People have brought us out cups of tea. We've managed to beg and borrow some stuff. We've planted spring bulbs. So it's kind of been quite good fun. This is a borage that we planted that's sort of come up. Somebody put in some tomatoes, and that's in one next to a mural. That's another sort of community action thing that's sort of happening to kind of revitalise the area. And we started to grow some seeds. We didn't really know what we were doing. None of us are really gardeners. We don't want to be doing it full time. But some of these seeds were harvested from what we'd grown. Some not successfully, some others, but we have sort of planted them out. And then we got some soil donated from Birkenhead Park, because a lot of the problem was trees had been growing in the planters, but we managed to kind of repopulate them. That's a bit kind of rich, so stuff hasn't really grown that well in that, but it's sort of getting better and a bit easier. And this is sort of the result. We've kind of some of them were being looked after by people in the street, but we've kind of added to it. So there's a lot more variety. And again, we've been able to harvest some of these seeds and spread them around, but they're kind of looking a bit better than they were. And they were just, a lot of them were just unused spaces that I think were put into combat speeding cars, I think initially what was the reason behind them. But in this sort of the spreading of this sort of seeds, we were looking at other space, and this is it's private development. It's the land on the seafront, Marine Point, and it's owned by a management company that's responsible to shareholders. So we asked them if they could maybe work with us and do some stuff on this kind of ground, and they kind of went back to the shareholders, and the shareholders weren't really interested in doing that. So it kind of made me start to think about this sort of, it's public land, but it's owned and managed by a management company, so therefore your councillor can't do anything about it. You don't really have these things. And looking into it, there is something called the Landscape and Ecology Management Plan when the developments are made, and I think it's a 30-year plan to look at what happens to spaces like that and make sure that they're managed properly. And this was a case where it sort of hadn't and stuff, and I tried to find out about it. I noticed in Birkenhead, Wirral Waters, the planting's quite nice at the moment, but is that just to sell some flats, or what's it going to look like in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, and who's managing it? What is it if it's down to shareholders? This is Squash in Toxteth. They were lucky they bought the land and they built the building, but it's quite a good model because they're a CIC, so that's asset locked. So if their business fails, it has to go to another community organisation. So I was thinking maybe there's a better way than having shareholders manage this type of land. Maybe that money or funds could go back into maybe a community gardener or somebody working with the parks and gardens. There's more of a long-term plan for these spaces, because otherwise it could just be left to be overgrown. So if you do know of any development, try and ask the questions about what sort of planting and who's doing it. Thank you.
Desire to
Thank you very much for that, Tim. You'll all be very pleased to hear that Dan completely ignored my suggestion for music to play after that one, when I suggested he should do Terry Wogan doing the floral dance. But anyway, you've managed to avoid that one. From Tim, who was talking about kind of shadowy cabals in charge of bits of land around New Brighton, you might look at the date of today's Ignite and think back to some other kind of, weird conspiracies and things. And thankfully, Tom Williamson is up here to tell us about all of those, the 9/11 conspiracies.
Hello, everyone. So, yes, in case you hadn't noticed, today's date is September the 11th. It's the 23rd anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, the biggest terrorist attack in history, where just under 3,000 people lost their lives. But I'd like to have a show of hands. Who remembers it? Because over 20 years ago, some hands didn't go up. Okay. So for those of you who didn't remember it, this is the official version of what happened. So at 7:59 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 takes off with 5 hijackers, including the ringleader, Mohammed Atta. 16 minutes later, from the same airport in Boston, Flight 175 takes off. And then at 8:20, Flight 77 takes off, another 5 hijackers. And then at 8:42, 42 minutes behind schedule, Flight 93 takes off from Newark, New Jersey. So with all the planes in the air, at 8:46, Flight 11 hits the North Tower of the World Trade Center. That was captured by some firemen filming a documentary and a Czech worker. But then with all eyes on the World Trade Center, there's loads of images of Flight 175 hitting the South Tower at 9:03. And then while those towers were burning, the Flight 77 hits the Pentagon at 9:37. And that's when everyone went, oh, wow, this is big. This is big. If it wasn't big before, it's big now. So after burning for about 56 minutes, the South Tower collapses. It falls to the floor after about 10 seconds after one of the floors just gives way. But the people on Flight 93, because they took off late, they've got mobile phones. They actually heard about it, and they thought, well, we don't want to meet the same fate. So they attacked the people who had hijacked the plane. And they were about to get in the cockpit when the hijacker pilot, put the plane into a nosedive, and it came down somewhere in Pennsylvania. And meanwhile, the North Tower is still burning, and it collapses at 10:28 a.m. But that wasn't the end of it. The collapse of the towers caused various other buildings to be destroyed and damaged. And most notably, World Trade Center 7, the debris had severed gas mains, started loads of fires, and it eventually gave up and collapsed at about 5:30. So the conspiracy theories started pretty much straight away. You have people like Alex Jones and InfoWars and the documentary Loose Change forming what's more or less called the 9/11 truth movement. But all of these conspiracy theories rely on what's called the House of Cards fallacy, this idea that if you just take one bit away, then it all comes down. But I'm afraid evidence doesn't work like that. Some of the claims are really, really easy to debunk. Things like the planes were holograms. It wasn't actually planes that flew into the towers on those days. It was missiles disguised as planes. And if anyone knew what CGI was like in 2001, it's just a pipe dream. And the other thing, jet fuel can't melt steel beams. Jet fuel can't make steel beams, Stu. It was a ridiculous mantra. But of course, the jet fuel didn't need to melt the steel beams. It just needed to weaken them. And people have studied this, and they found that when you heat the steel for long enough, it buckles. You can see that Boeing effect on the picture on the right. And eventually, it couldn't support the floor above, and that came down. very much like the French demolition technique of Veronage. You can watch compilations of this on YouTube. So what they do is they remove one floor, remove all the supports, and the whole building comes down. But the thing is, no one really cares about 9/11 truth anymore. It was never going to go anywhere, and it's now just this weird little historical curio. But what we should remember from 9/11 is the heroes, because we saw the worst of humanity that day, but we also saw the best. So we saw people like the firefighters. Over 300 firefighters died that day. They were going in when everyone else was coming out. And of course, the people on Flight 93, who if they hadn't fought back, 9/11 would have been even worse than it was. Thank you very much.
No? It's as if we plan all of these things. Well, Lydia plans all these things. I just get on stage and take all the glory. So we are going to have a break before we come back with the second half and some more talks. So get yourselves a drink. We'll be about 20 minutes. I'll give you a 5-minute warning again, like I did before the start of the first half. And if there's anything that you want to pitch in the 1-minute pitch slots, then come and find me during the interval, and we will see you back in 20 minutes. Hello, everybody. If you're giving a 1-minute pitch, if you can make your way down to this kind of the area, the holding pen for the 1-minute pitches, and you'll be amazed to hear that in a fantastic turn of events, during the interval, we gained another talk. Woo! And now there's the bit where I have to try and remember who everybody's name is on the 1-minute pitches, and I think that is this Ian lined up first? Yes. If you welcome Ian to the stage, who's going to tell us about Make It Right CIC.
Hello. Make It Right. That's WRITE. Make It Right. It's a safe place for aspiring playwrights. Now, it's a very lonely job being a playwright, being a writer of any description. This is a safe space. It is actually a place where you can hear your words coming out of the mouths of real live actors free of charge. Now, you can't do better than that, can you? Because it can change your life to hear what you've written actually expressed. And it might make you rewrite it as well. The thing about this is it's just a group of people who've been there and done that, as well as people who want to get up and do it for themselves. So you've actually got a situation whereby you've got constructive criticism there from people who've been there and done it. You've got a hands-on assistance to edit, cast, and stage your play. That's worth a lot. We've helped a lot of people to do exactly that. And we have our own theatre, which is actually in Rodney Street. It's called The Studio Below. And we are now hosting a load of work for the Fringe that's coming up in October. So look us up on Facebook. Look us up, Make It Right on Facebook, and The Studio Below on Facebook. And you can book yourself some time in the studio below, because the studio below also has a recording suite and photography suite. It's an amazing resource, and it's there for all and everyone. Look us up on Facebook, Make It Right, and the studio below. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that. And next we have Roger Hill talking about radio.
That'd be nice. Thank you very much. 15 months ago, the BBC in Merseyside, as BBC Radio Merseyside, had a clear out. And they cleared out a lot of programmes, and they cleared out a lot of presenters to leave a lot of space for shared programmes. I have nothing to say on that subject, except that I was one of the people who got cleared out, and my programme was one of the ones that got cleared out. And that would have meant, after 46 years, the longest running alternative music programme on local radio, in fact, on any radio in this country, would have disappeared without trace. And we didn't particularly want that to happen, and it didn't happen in the end. So that means that if you want to hear what we still do, then on the last Sunday of every month, at 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock, you will be able to hear the broadcast. The programme was then, and still is, called the Popular Music Show, PMS. It's still broadcast, and it's got most of the rest of the team that were there throughout that period working for the BBC. It's still got the huge range from new music you won't even have heard of, all the way through to classics in almost every genre, and local music to boot. It's a resource, a unique resource that's probably been distinguished for a long time. The thing to say is how to get in touch and how to hear about it and how to hear it. Very simply, we moved to a digital station locally based in the Baltic Triangle called Svara. That's S-V-A-R-A, Svara Radio. And they are the people we go to do the broadcasting live on those Sundays. If you wanted to find us on an email, on a website, we are pmsradio.co.uk. And I encourage you to spread the word. If you happen to be a person who doesn't listen on Sunday tea times, find somebody else who does, because we could do with an ever-increasing audience, because we think we're rather good, and I think if you listen, you will agree. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Roger. And next up, Paul Barnfather talking about International Repair Day.
Yeah, well, you've given away my punchline. So do you know what's happening on October the 19th? That is International Repair Day, which is a celebration of not throwing things out, but repairing them instead. And to mark this occasion, Chester is getting its very own repair cafe, thanks to Friends of the Earth. So Friends of the Earth have put this together. We are fundraising on spacehive.com, so if you could spare a few quid, we'd very much appreciate it. But even better, if you can come down to Hoole Community Centre in Chester on Saturday the 19th, either as a volunteer or if you need something repairing, do come on down at 11 a.m. Would love to see you there. Thank you very much.
I'll try not to trip myself over. Right, next up is Jackie Pease talking about the Does Liverpool Boost membership.
Hiya. So I have hopefully given most people one of these leaflets anyway. But the reason I'm giving it the hard sell tonight is that the closing date is 11:59 on this Sunday. So Does Liverpool is a makerspace, co-working space and event space just off London Road, so only 10 minutes from Lime Street Station. And we've got a whole load of equipment for a start, like laser cutters, 3D printers, CNC routers, embroidery machine, that sort of stuff. And a whole load of desks and quite good internet as well. So what this gives you is the chance to work from Does Liverpool for 6 months, either with a desk or just having access to the maker part of the workshop part of the place. And it's a draw. So if if you think that you would benefit from this and couldn't normally afford it perhaps, then you can apply to this, and you've got just as good a chance of getting it as anybody else who applies. And so the details are on here, but come and ask me any other questions you've got. And but on the back, I've also put all the free events that we have at Does Liverpool, including we also have a repair cafe there, which is this Sunday. So thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. And our last 1 minute pitch is from Chris Armitage, who's going to tell us to strike a pose.
So I'd like to take you back to the cold December of 2022. And there's a group of friends looking for basically a way to have a pre-Christmas get-together. But you know what Friday nights are like in December, out in the mean streets of Liverpool city centre, as well as your usual stag and hen do's. You've got all your office parties out for their one big hurrah, behaving disgracefully in every pub and drinking den they can find. So we had the bright idea of all chipping in. So 20 of us put £10 in, and we hired out Quarry, which is a DIY venue just north of the city centre. And we decided to put on our own night. So spoken word, musicians, we have like dance troupes, drag acts, anything really, anyone can perform. And then halfway through, it turns into like a DJ, like a club night, where the dance floor gets sweatier, it gets wilder, etc., all into the small hours of the evening. So because we'd already paid for the venue hire, we didn't really want to charge, we weren't doing it to make money. So what we decided to do was to ask for donations on the door for a group of workers that were on strike. So the first event was for Caseworkers Union, a group of posties that were on strike. And now we're into our 7th event, which is coming up next month on Friday, the 18th of October. So we've raised money for GMB workers who were on strike at the Royal recently over an unpaid COVID payment. I've also raised money for train drivers who were on strike a few years ago. So yeah, everyone's welcome. Quarry, 8 o'clock on Friday, the 18th of October. And also as well, last time on our 6th event, we organised a mass cycle ride to the event for the first time. So we had 70 cyclists with a performance trike, with a pink rabbit, with lights and music. Some would say too much drum and bass. I said not enough drum and bass. But yeah, it's fantastic, a fantastic night, really inclusive. Everyone's welcome, and we've got a great community down here. So yes, you're all welcome. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Chris. Let me just do a little tiny bit of mic adjustment while we get things sorted. So Chris was just talking about there being a mass cycle ride, which leads us nicely into the first talk of the second half, because Ed Goman is going to come on and tell us about cycling and walking in Liverpool. Which he starts by demonstrating how to walk in Liverpool, and then he's got a bike hidden behind this plant.
Thank you very much. Okay, good evening. The Liverpool City Council's Cabinet recently approved a new cycling and walking infrastructure plan known as an LC WIP. And it's really ambitious and it's pretty good. However, I have my doubts about if they'll actually deliver it. Though I think it's a good plan. The main reason I have doubts about it is because they've had very ambitious plans in the past that they've not delivered on. And the previous highways director, he was arrested for corruption, but he hasn't. He's innocent until proven guilty. So this was the last cycle strategy they had, which was set up in 2014. And they wanted to create a cycling revolution in Liverpool. Have we witnessed a cycling revolution, do we think? No. And this came out in 2019, or I think 2015. This was one of the first bike life reports, the cycling walking index, as it would be known. So basically, only 4% of residents cycle 4% of residents cycle 5 times a week, and 13% cycle once a week. And then 4 years later, when they rechecked that, that stayed exactly the same. So basically, we've made very little progress on getting more people cycling. And then, see, one of the big reasons that I'm obsessed about active travel is to do with climate change. So there's no way we're getting to this net zero 2030 target, which is a Liverpool City Council target, unless we massively change the way we cycle, the way we move around. This is from the report, and it says, as you can see there, transport is the second biggest emitter of carbon emissions in Liverpool City Council area. So I'm obsessed with this because I'm a director of an organisation called Zero Carbon Liverpool City Region. And so we want to support Liverpool City Council with this target. Transport is a huge emitter, and we think it's an area that people can make a difference in locally because the council does control the roads. It's a huge challenge, but the numbers are going the wrong way. This just shows the amount of miles, millions of miles traveled by car and other vehicles. And it's still going, it hasn't really gone down. This was a recent report which showed that more people were driving more and cycling less after we had like a little boom after COVID, and that's starting to drop off a little bit. So there's a lot of headwinds we're going to have to try and overcome if we're going to get there. So they put out this new transport plan this last year. This is Liverpool City Council. It runs up until March 2027. This is one of the main points of this is about how do we hit these net zero targets. So they wanted to get all trips, 10% of all trips by bike by 2027, and they wanted to cut carbon emissions from the transport sector by 50% by 2027, which is quite ambitious. So this is the local cycling walking plan. That's the existing infrastructure that we've got there, just the green and yellow bits. The blue bits are just signposted, so they're not really kind of cycling infrastructure. That's the network they want to deliver. This is all going to be kind of like super, really good cycling infrastructure that they want to put in. I think there's 12 strategic routes or 13 strategic routes and 30 primary routes as part of that. And this is the kind of stuff they're talking about putting in there, which is mainly segregated bike lanes, quiet streets, and improved crossings. I'm getting ahead of myself now. I'm caught up. And they've also got these walking zones, they call core walking zones. I think there's 36 of these. And the huge green splodge there is the city centre. And so it's not exactly clear what they want to do, like what these walking zones are. Sort of like this kind of stuff, widened footpaths, improved crossings and continuous footways. Although conspicuously absent from this list is restricting access for motor vehicles and cars and electric vehicles. So this area here, again, is it's the same as the green splodge. It's called the City Centre Mobility Strategy Study Area. So they were going to do this City Centre Mobility Strategy, which was hopefully going to be about how do we restrict cars and vans and all these kind of things driving through the city centre, like that we have already on kind of Bold Street and Liverpool 1. So I'm kind of hoping that this City Centre Mobility Strategy extends that out to like all of the city centre, and so then we can have a cycling revolution. Who's with me, comrades?
Thanks for that, Ed. I'm totally on board with the cycling for helping climate change, but as Chris mentioned, it's also loads of fun. Like the ride we did down to Strike a Pose the other month was just boss. Like we had this if you want to see a video of it, you just need to find my YouTube channel, because there's a video of a crazy performance trike and flares and all sorts of shit. Anyway, on to our second speaker. So when you've got your kind of easy walking and cycling platform, then you're going to need somewhere to live to go with that. And so just thinking a little bit further into the future, John Daly is going to tell us about housing in Liverpool in 2050.
Good evening. So unless you've been living under a rock for the last few months, you know there's been a general election. And of course, there is a new government, and we've been discussing loads about economy and energy and cost of living and a number of other things. But within housing, the big thing that was we've become obsessed with building new homes, 370,000 a year. And look at that graph. The last time we done anything like that, it was before 1970. A massive, massive need for homes. We understand that. But at the same time, the actual figure that we're delivering at the moment is actually in line with the current population growth. And believe it or not, population growth is going to slow. So why are we focusing on going mad on house building when it is slowing? It's like the homeless and the empty homes. And for me, alongside the UK Green Builders Council, 80% of the homes that we have now are going to be here for 2050. So you're thinking, why are we not focusing on the 80%? We're focusing on 20% of the problem, which I just think is just a bit nuts. But again, there's wider challenges for this. 20% of all carbon emissions is from housing. There's wider agendas on this. So the Paris Climate Agreement with a number of different countries. And of course, activists such as Greta Thunberg remind us that we have to do our best to reduce the amount of carbon that we are emitting. And again, this came into the nation in terms of legislation, not only in terms of the Climate Change Act in 2008, but that guy in the middle, Chris Skidmore, in 2019 made the target even more intensive. And we're constantly getting told by the Climate Change Commission we need to do better. But you don't need to look far to look at the challenges. Energy in the next few months is going to go up 10%. Cost of living is increasing by 20%. Rents are on average going up about 9%. And of course, mortgages still in the 5 to 6% increase category, which is mad. But when you think about it, with all these financial pressures, who's going to pay for it? Because ultimately, even if we want to take all housing to net zero standard, the social and the private, it's £200 billion. And I haven't got that in my back pocket. I don't know who else could afford something like that. But Liverpool is very similar. We've got 230,000 homes, 500,000 people. We have to basically extend the amount of homes by 60,000 to 2050 to keep up with the population. But at the same time, we've got our own challenges. So I said before, the population is slowing, but intergenerational living is a very big challenge. We're going to see people living longer. And again, how are we going to have more people living in the space that we have? 50% of all of our homes are a council tax band-aid. They are the smallest homes that you can buy. Likewise, in terms of deprivation, we are the third most deprived local authority in the country for health and wealth. And in the next few months, 19% of all people are going to choose between heating and eating, which for me, in this day and age, is a disgrace, because we shouldn't be choosing for that. Likewise, our current homes, only 45% of them are warm enough to 2030 standards. 55% are under EPCC, which the government is saying is the 2030 standard. So there's a lot going on there, and that's all linked towards wider agendas, such as the NHS, and again, the Healthy Homes Agenda. 1.4 billion is spent every year on just treating people for cold homes from damp and mold, which unfortunately we saw the untimely death of Awab Ishaq. But we're doing enough for housing providers to be able to prevent this in the form of external and internal wall insulation, but also as well looking at innovative methods to look at how we insulate homes underneath the floor. And we're also using more sustainable methods for roof insulation, such as sheep's wool, which is quite sustainable in itself. Likewise as well, we also have to look at the energy that we are using. So hydrogen is going to become a bit of a thing in the next few years. But we're seeing a lot more electrification. We're seeing a lot more around air source and ground source heat pumps amongst solar. And again, 20% of your bill is all down to the way you use your energy. And that is to do with these things here. There's technology that's actually trying to help you reduce your use to make your home a bit more smart in how we're doing it. Some of these you've already got. If you had to ask me what housing in 2050 in Liverpool would be like, it's an easy 4-letter word. T, it will be the presence of technology. I've just shown you there is a lot going on, and it's only going to get more, which is a bit mad when you think about it. The next one is about the E, and that's about the electric versus hydrogen debate. It's going to be a bit VHS versus Betamax, or Blu-ray versus DVD. I don't know what generation you are, but it's one of them two anyway, and it's going to be interesting to see the difference between it. Next as well is going to be about culture. So I said before about how we use our energy, but we have to be talking amongst ourselves as communities to think, well, what can we do to make sure that we're reducing our usage? And last, and no means least, is about H when it comes up now, right? It's about highlighting all these changes because ultimately we matter as a community. And for me, we need to highlight to our politicians and our leaders that we matter and we have to keep them accountable for sustainable homes, neighbourhoods and lives towards 2050 and beyond. Thank you.
Brothers got to make to keep you can't hang around. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our house. It has a crowd. There's always something happening and it's usually quite loud. Our mum, she's so house proud. Nothing ever slows her down and a mess is not allowed.
Thanks for that, John. I don't know if anybody was like me when he was spelling out those letters and there was a T and an E, and I was just hoping it wasn't going to be an N and a T as to the future of our housing, but thankfully it wasn't. So our next speaker is the surprise addition to the lineup. So he's pulled together a talk over the interval. I think it's about AI, not that it was written by AI, but you know, it was done in the interval, so who knows? I'm sure we're going to find out. If you welcome to the stage, Alex Keita.
Thank you, man. I don't know if I'm just going to do it like this. I think that's an easy way to go about it. But hello, everyone. My name's Alex Keita, and I'm just going to give a very short introduction to generative AI. I label myself as an AI optimist. There are a lot of people that are scared about robots taking over the world, but hopefully it won't. No, it's quite clear that it won't. It's going to affect the way that we do a lot of our tasks, but it is also a massive enabler and an accessibility boost for many people. So what is AI? In a nutshell, it's computers that are learning to recognize patterns. We have machine learning as a concept of recognizing you've got loads of numbers on a spreadsheet. You can predict if you've got all of these inputs, what's your likely output. You do it with images. You have lots of images of a dog. You can start to say, this is likely an image of a dog. And we already use this for lots of things like Netflix recommendations. You've watched loads of these shows. You're going to like these shows. And also for your Google Maps. You've been to these places. You're going to like these restaurants. What's exciting now is obviously generative AI. We got lots of people who have probably heard of things like ChatGPT, Stable Diffusion, where you can generate text, you can generate images, and it's kind of a big deal because it means that as a complete nascent beginner, if you have an idea of, I want to start a community project or a business, or I just need support on my homework, you can now go ask a computer and get that help, whilst your mum or your brother might just tell you to sod off. Right? My brother Jamie is an awesome person. He's very creative, he's hardworking, he's determined, he's really great at problem solving. But the problem is, he's dyslexic, so throughout his life, he's been told that he's kind of an idiot because he can't write things the same way, he can't structure his ideas in the formal way that other people can. But now, with the help of generative AI and some of the tools that I've built for him, he can go to something like this, where if he needs to write a formal email, he just needs to know the idea he gets across, fills in the form, and then it wraps it up in nice language that he can send out to someone so he can communicate his idea, making it much more accessible for him to engage with the council, with his local politician, or with other people in his community, or even for things like asking for a raise at work. Another way that he's been using AI, and I encourage many other people to, is what we've called generative vision boarding. You go into this and you plan out your holiday, you plan out your next trip, your next idea, and you can just come up with ideas or images of what it would look like. Another way that people are using these things are personal assistants, and something that we see for a lot of people are for role plays in job interviews, difficult conversations with your missus. If you've done something wrong and you can go to a computer and say, I made this silly mistake, how can I prepare for that conversation with my missus so that she doesn't break up with me? That's actually a really useful tool to enable you to then go into that conversation having had a bit of preparation. Obviously, there are some risks. These tools are predictive models. They do not have a construct of fact. They do not think the way that we do, and therefore, if you go into it, you can't just believe everything it says, right? If you have a smart friend, you can ask your smart friend for advice, but they might be just chatting rubbish sometimes, and maybe they're just pulling your leg. You still need to do your own diligence. The slide here talks about how essentially we're at a task level with AI at the moment. It might write some emails, it might do some research for you, but it doesn't completely replace the role that you do. But as we move, we'll start to go to process automation, so things like driving, which is going to be coming for the world. And then after driving, we'll have, say, Uber, except you won't actually need taxi drivers to be manipulating the vehicle. The last two slides showed really the escalation of how good this technology is getting. The previous slide was 2023, Will Smith eating spaghetti. It's all janky image, it's all pixelated, there's all distortion. And then we've now got very interesting photorealistic video that you can generate by describing. And I am so excited for the generation of young filmmakers who can have their dream of, I'd love to make a movie of Harry Potter, but imagine they were all snake people, or they were all lizards, or something like that, and they can just take their idea and bring it into reality. I've massively run over time, but essentially the reason why I stand here as an AI evangelist, as an optimist, is because I really see this technology enabling people to go out and just try things and build things and essentially chase after anything that they have in their imagination and bring it into the real world. So, thank you.
Charging our victory, and now we're full of energy. We are the robots.
Thanks for that, Alex. Showing that humans can still summarize things and condense them for you. You don't have to always use AI for that. But I mean, who is real? I mean, we haven't got time for this. Isn't philosophy in pubs. This is Ignite Liverpool. Which brings us to our last speaker of the evening. This is where you're supposed to go. And if you can welcome to the stage Jim Bellew, who's going to tell us about Bellew's dictum.
Oh, it's a precarious route up here.
There's a step over that side.
Ah, well, actually, I come on the wrong side. There we go. Rules. Who bloody needs rules? Yeah, we don't make them. Somebody makes them for us. And these people who make our rules, they're a bunch of bastards, aren't they? We really don't need. But they're not the rules we should be worried about. The rules that are really important are the ones that nature made for us. Now, nature made these rules long before we ever got here. And these rules were the ones that people looked at and decided that they could take them, write them up, and pretend they invented them. And these are the Archimedes and Pythagoras and all these rules they taught us. And these guys copyrighted them and ran off with the cookie jar because there was a book in it. So I thought to myself, that cheats, these bastards. I'm going to have my own. So I decided I'm going to do my homework, do my research, and have my own law of physics. It's physics and science. So I then set off and went around the world researching. I ended up in New York. And I was in New York, so I decided to research cocktails. And I did the 2nd Avenue strip, researching cocktails and small, cheap, or free food. And I ended up in that place where all us Liverpoolians know about, the one where you're saying, Come on, get it up, you'll feel much better. You know that one. So that was my moment of epiphany. That was when I shouted Eureka. I didn't jump out the bath, I just shouted Eureka. Because I'd invented or created or discovered Bellew's dictum that all the joys of life come from substances entering and leaving the body. Now the key bit was leaving the body. We all know about the entering stuff, don't we? But now all these laws were made by Mother Nature. Look at that cracking woman there. Anyway, Mother Nature, smart as a tack. Mother Nature created us as tubes. Basically, we're all tubes. And the food goes in the top and comes out the bottom. Unfortunately, she put the waste disposal close to the playground. I didn't understand that. But we all have portals. We all have portals, and there's 7 portals. We all have 7 portals. One of them is our pores. And all the stuff that goes in and out of our pores, there's 1 million. We've each got 1 million. And it's no sweat. Well, it is sweat. But 4 of these portals are in the head. 2 of them are below the waist. But I'll get to them. But this one is the big one. This is the gob. And that is where, and we all know about that. We spend most of our time having a real good time finding the joy, putting stuff down our gob. And we also get them singing and shouting. And then we've got the other 2 portals there is our eyes, with all the stuff that comes in our eyes. And a thing of beauty is a joy forever. And it makes your eyes go cross. Who's he looking at? Anyway, we move on to the other bit, the ears and the nose and all the stuff. You can imagine all the stuff goes in and out of there. However, below the waist, we have these. I know it's sensitive, this stuff. So I'm going to use the technical terms now. Men have danglies and women have jinglies. Now, what goes on down there is not to be sniffed at. I'll tell you, there is an enormous amount of traffic that goes on in these portals because it's in and out all over the place. And the joy that you get out of that, believe me, I've done the research, and I have to say, I recommend that all of you do it too. So my advice to you is if you find yourself, the next slide should be coming up any minute. There you go. If you find yourself on a 20-hour flight to New Zealand, start making a list of all the joys that you can find, all the mechanisms that you find for all these joys. And if you find yourself on a 12-hour train to Leeds with these trains that are all afraid to leave the station, you know the ones I mean, then make yourself a list of the Bellew's dictum, all the joys of life that come from substances entering and leaving the body. This is another Liverpool Wellfest, and you heard it here.
Thank you very much for that, Jim. What an excellent way to end the 51st Ignite Liverpool. And because we're a little bit early, there might still be some time to get some more substances to put into your body. And probably to leave some as well. I'm sure they don't close the toilets just until a bit later on. So if we can have a big round of applause for all of the speakers we've heard tonight. And a round of applause for Neil and Dan and Lydia and Finn. So in a break from recent time, some recent tradition, we actually know when the next Ignite's going to be. Like normally, I just going to go, oh, it'll be about 3 months or so. But I'm reliably informed by Neil earlier on that it's going to be in exactly 3 months on the 11th of December. So get that in your diaries now. And work out what it is that you're passionate about and what talk you're going to give. And then let Neil know so that you can be up on stage in December giving a talk. That'll be great. So, yeah, I think that's about it, really. Like, you know, I hope you've all had a good time, and we will see you in December. Thank you very much.